The council chamber fell silent as Commander Vextharian stepped forward. His forelegs clicked against the crystal floor. His scales shifted from blue to gray, showing his nervousness. Around him sat the 12 leaders of the Galactic Hegemony. They ruled over 1,000 worlds and 10,000 species. They had conquered half the galaxy. Nothing scared them. But today, Vextharian would try to make them afraid. "Honored leaders," he began, his voice steady despite his fear. "I come to speak about Earth." The word caused immediate reactions. Some leaders shifted uncomfortably. Others whispered to their advisors. The oldest among them, a being of pure crystal named Kolv Th, simply closed his many eyes and sighed. "Earth again," muttered High Commander Vex. He was a massive creature with 8 arms and skin like armor. "Why do we keep discussing that worthless rock?" Vextharian touched a control panel. A hologram of a small blue planet appeared in the center of the chamber. It looked peaceful, beautiful even. Swirls of white clouds covered blue oceans and green continents. It seemed harmless, because in 300 years, Vextharian said, "We have sent 847 ships to this planet, from 12 different species, military vessels, exploration ships, diplomatic envoys, scientific probes." He paused and looked at each leader in turn. None of them have returned. The chamber erupted in noise. Leaders shouted questions. Advisors demanded explanations. Vextharian waited for the chaos to settle before continuing. "Let me show you the records." The hologram changed. It now displayed a timeline stretching back centuries. Red dots marked each lost expedition. 312 years ago, the Crethean Empire sent their entire Third Fleet to conquer Earth. 200 warships, 50,000 soldiers, the most advanced weapons of their time. Vextharian's scales turned darker. They entered the system around Earth. Then nothing. No messages, no distress signals, no wreckage. They simply vanished. He moved to the next entry. 280 years ago, the merchant guilds sent a diplomatic mission. They wanted to trade with whatever primitive species lived on Earth. 15 ships carrying gifts and translators and peace offerings. Gone, more entries followed. The Silence Collective had sent their best stealth probes, designed to be undetectable. Vanished. The Void Walkers, beings made of pure energy who could travel through solid matter, had investigated. They too disappeared. The machine intelligence called the Endless had sent self-replicating probes. That should have been impossible to destroy completely. Even they had been silenced. "Every type of approach has failed," Vextharian explained. "Aggressive, peaceful, hidden, direct, nothing returns from Earth. We have lost more ships to that one small planet than to all our wars combined." High Commander Vex slammed his fist on the table. "Then why haven't we simply destroyed it? A few planet cracker bombs would solve this mystery permanently. We tried." Vextharian said quietly, 40 years ago, a single ship carrying enough weapons to shatter a world. It entered Earth's system and vanished. Kolveth finished, his ancient voice like wind through caves. "Like all the others. I remember. I voted against that mission." The Supreme Arbiter, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. Her name was Kethra, and she was young for her position. Among the Solarians, she had risen to power through ambition and ruthlessness. Her silver eyes showed no fear, only calculation. "This is unacceptable," she said. Her voice was cold and sharp. "The hegemony does not tolerate mysteries. We do not accept defeat. Whatever is happening at Earth must be explained and dealt with respect, Supreme Arbiter." An elderly advisor said, "Perhaps some mysteries are better left alone." "The losses we have suffered are an insult to our power," Kethra interrupted. "Every year that Earth remains unexplained, our enemies grow bolder. They whisper that the mighty hegemony is afraid of one tiny planet. They say we are weak." She stood and walked toward the hologram of Earth. Her silver robes trailed behind her like liquid metal. "I am authorizing Operation Final Answer. We will send an armada so large that nothing can stand against it. 3,000 ships, planet-cracking weapons. If Earth will not reveal its secrets, we will reduce it to dust." Several leaders voiced their approval. Others looked worried but said nothing. Only Kolv Th spoke against the plan. "Supreme Arbiter, I have lived for 6,000 years. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have watched the confident become the conquered. Earth is different. The old records, the ones from before the hegemony existed, they speak of that planet differently. Kethra turned to face him. How so? They called it not a quarantine world, but a sanctuary. The crystal being's voice grew quieter. You should ask yourselves, Supreme Arbiter, a sanctuary for whom? Kethra smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Superstition. Nothing more. The operation will proceed. She turned to the assembled leaders. Fleet Admiral Murkoth will command the armada. We launch in 30 days. By the time we are finished, Earth will either surrender its secrets or cease to exist. The Council voted. Most supported the Supreme Arbiter, either from genuine agreement or fear of opposing her. The decision was made. After the meeting ended, Vextharian found himself walking beside Kolv Th through the station's long corridors. You did well, the ancient being said. You presented the facts clearly, but facts mean nothing to those who have already decided what they want to believe. Do you really think this is a mistake? Vextharian asked. Kolv Th stopped. His crystalline body caught the light and scattered it into rainbows. I have a memory, he said, from when I was young. Before the hegemony, before most of the species here even existed, there was a race called the Architects. They were old when the stars were young. They built wonders that we cannot even understand today. What happened to them? They went to Earth. Kolveth's voice was barely a whisper. Not to conquer, to seek. They said they had found something there. Something that changed everything they believed about the universe. They said they were going to join it. Join what? I do not know. No one knows. The Architects vanished completely. Not just their expedition. Their entire civilization. Their worlds still exist, but they are empty. Museums of a species that simply transcended. Vextharian felt cold despite the warm air of the station. You think Earth had something to do with that? I think, Kolv Th said carefully, that we assume Earth is a threat because that is all we understand. Conquest, domination, destruction. But the universe is larger than our understanding. Perhaps what waits at Earth is not an enemy. Perhaps it is something far more terrifying to beings like us. What could be more terrifying than an enemy? Kolv Th began walking again, his crystal form chiming softly with each step. A teacher. The preparation for Operation Final Answer took exactly 30 days. 3,000 ships gathered at the edge of hegemony space. They represented the greatest military force ever assembled. Battleships the size of small moons. Carriers filled with fighters. Support vessels carrying enough supplies for a campaign lasting years. Fleet Admiral Murkoth stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Absolute Truth. He was a veteran of 100 campaigns. He had conquered worlds. He had destroyed species that refused to submit. Nothing had ever defeated him. But as he looked at the distant star that was Earth's sun, he felt something he had not felt in decades, doubt. The reports from previous expeditions played in his mind. 800 ships, 12 species, 3 centuries, all gone without a trace. No enemy in history had achieved such a perfect record. Not even close. His second in command, a younger officer named Sevra, approached. Admiral, the fleet is ready. We await your order to enter the dead zone. Murkoth nodded slowly. The dead zone, that's what they call it now, isn't it? The region of space around Earth where ships disappear. A superstitious name, Admiral. Our sensors show nothing unusual about that region. No anomalies. No dangers. Whatever happened to previous expeditions? I'm certain our superior numbers will what? Murkoth interrupted. The Crethean fleet was the largest of its time. They had numbers. The Endless were machines that could not die. They had immortality. The Void Walkers were beings of pure energy. They had transcendence. All of them failed. Sever shifted uncomfortably. What are you saying, Admiral? Murkoth turned from the viewport. His face was hard but thoughtful. I'm saying that for the first time in my career, I truly do not know what we face. And that uncertainty, officer, is more dangerous than any enemy. He straightened his uniform and walked toward the command center. But orders are orders. Send the signal. The fleet moves out at dawn. As 3,000 ships began their journey toward Earth, none of their crews knew what awaited them. They believed in their weapons. They trusted in their numbers. They had faith in their supremacy. But somewhere in the darkness ahead, Something ancient waited. Something that had watched countless such fleets approach over millions of years. Something that had never been defeated because it had never needed to fight. The humans called them guardians, and they were already watching. The journey to Earth took 17 days. 17 days of traveling through normal space, where sensors showed nothing unusual. 17 days of perfect calm. And somehow, that made everything worse. Fleet Admiral Murkoff spent most of those days reviewing the records of previous expeditions. He read their final reports. He studied their sensor data. He listened to their last communications. Everything was normal until suddenly it wasn't. Ships would report approaching Earth's system. Then silence. Complete and absolute silence. On the 18th day, the fleet entered the dead zone. Nothing changed. The officers on the bridge of the Absolute Truth watched their displays with growing tension. They expected attack. They expected strange readings. They expected something. But space remained empty and quiet. Stars shone steadily. The distant yellow sun of Earth grew slowly larger. "Admiral," Sever said, "we're 3 days into the dead zone. Still no contact. No anomalies. Nothing." Murkoff nodded but didn't relax. "That's what bothers me. 800 ships disappeared in this region. Where is the danger? Where is the enemy? Why can't we see anything?" Perhaps, Sever suggested, the previous expeditions destroyed whatever threatened them. Perhaps we're chasing ghosts. Perhaps. Murkoff didn't believe it for a moment. The fleet continued forward. 2 more days passed. Then 3. The crews began to relax. Jokes were made about the famous dead zone. Some officers suggested that the whole thing had been exaggerated. Fear and superstition, nothing more. Then the transmission came. It didn't arrive through normal channels. It didn't use any known frequency or technology. One moment there was silence. The next moment, words appeared in every mind aboard every ship. Every crew member heard it in their own language, in a voice that seemed to come from inside their heads. "You are approaching protected space. State your intentions." 3,000 ships went to battle stations simultaneously. Weapons powered up. Shields activated. Sensors swept the surrounding space desperately, searching for the source of the transmission. They found nothing. "All ships report," Murkoff commanded. Did everyone receive that message? The reports came flooding in. Every ship had heard it. Every crew member. Even the artificial intelligences that ran the support systems had detected it. But none of them could explain how it had happened. "Respond on all frequencies," Murkoff ordered. "This is Fleet Admiral Murkoff of the Galactic Hegemony. We come with overwhelming force. We demand to know what happened to our previous expeditions. You will surrender immediately or face total destruction." The response was immediate calm, and utterly terrifying in its certainty. "Your intentions are understood. You may proceed. We recommend you do not." Murkoff felt a chill run down his spine. He had threatened civilizations before. He had demanded surrender from species on the edge of extinction. He had heard desperate pleas and defiant last stands. But he had never heard anything like this voice. It wasn't afraid. It wasn't angry. It wasn't even concerned. It spoke like a parent warning a child not to touch a hot stove. Not as a threat, but as simple fact. "Continue forward," Murkoff commanded. All ships maintain battle formation. The fleet advanced. Earth's sun grew larger. They passed the orbits of outer gas giants. Strange, frozen worlds that looked like the planets around 1,000 other stars. Nothing special. Nothing dangerous. Then they saw the ships. "Admiral," Sever whispered, "are you seeing this?" Murkoff was seeing it. He couldn't look away. Stretching before them, ranged in perfect rows that extended beyond sensor range, were ships. Thousands of ships. Ships from every era and every species. Ancient vessels of designs no one recognized. Newer ships bearing the marks of the Crethean Empire. Merchant Guild transports. Silence collective stealth ships, now visible and still. Row after row after row, floating in the darkness like exhibits in a museum. "Full scan," Murkoff ordered. His voice was steady, but something had changed in his eyes. "I want analysis of those ships immediately." The science officers worked frantically. Data streamed across their screens. What they found made no sense. "Admiral, the ships are intact. All of them. No battle damage. No systems failures. Power plants are cold but undamaged. Life support is offline but functional. It's like the science officer swallowed. It's like everyone simply got up and left. That's impossible, Sever said. No one would abandon their ships in enemy space. There's more. The science officer's voice had gone thin with fear. Some of these ships, sir, some of these ships are old, very old. We're detecting vessels from civilizations that died out before the hegemony existed. Ships that are thousands of years old. Some appear to be millions of years old. Murkoth stared at the graveyard of vessels. Millions of years. Civilizations had risen and fallen while these ships floated here. Species had evolved and gone extinct. Stars had been born and died. And through it all, these ships had waited. But that's impossible, he said quietly. Entropy alone would have destroyed them. Metal corrodes. Systems degrade. Nothing survives for millions of years without maintenance, unless something is maintaining them. The science officer replied. The transmission returned, that same calm voice in every mind. You have seen our collection. Every species that came with violence is represented. Their crews live comfortable lives on Earth. Their ships remain as reminders. You may still turn back. This is your final courtesy. Murkoth stood frozen at his command post. His entire understanding of the universe was cracking around him. The hegemony was powerful. The hegemony was supreme. Nothing in the galaxy could stand against the hegemony. But this was something else entirely. He opened a channel to Supreme Arbiter Kethra, who was watching everything through quantum link from Hegemony Central. Supreme Arbiter, I advise caution. Whatever we face here is beyond anything in our records. The technology required to preserve these ships, to transmit directly into mines, to capture crews without any battle damage. Kethra's silver eyes stared back at him through the display. Are you suggesting we retreat, Admiral? I am suggesting we gather more information before what? Before we embarrass the entire hegemony? Before we prove to every conquered species that we can be frightened by voices and old ships? Kethra's voice was sharp as broken glass. You have your orders, Admiral. Continue the mission. Find out what happened to our people. And if Earth proves hostile, destroy it. The transmission cut off. Murkoth stood in silence for a long moment. Around him, his officers waited for orders. Behind him, 3,000 ships waited for commands. Before him, a graveyard of ancient vessels waited for new additions. Helm, he finally said, continue course toward Earth. All ships maintain formation. All weapons remain at full readiness. The fleet moved forward. Passing through the rows of silent ships, crews pressed against viewports, staring at the vessels of lost civilizations. Some recognized ships from species they had themselves conquered. Others saw designs from history books, from legends, from myths. And somewhere, watching them advance, ancient beings older than the galaxy itself observed with patient interest. They had seen this scene play out countless times. The arrival, the threats, the discovery of the collection, the moment of choice. Most species chose to continue. Pride was a powerful thing. Fear of appearing weak was often stronger than fear of the unknown. These new rivals would be no different. But there was always hope. In all the millions of years, a few species had turned back. A few had chosen wisdom over pride. A few had earned the right to return home and think about what they had seen. The Guardians waited to see what these newcomers would choose. As the fleet passed the last row of preserved ships, a young officer approached Murkoth. Admiral, I've been studying the historical records. The ships in that graveyard represent a combined military force, greater than anything in galactic history. Millions of soldiers, thousands of civilizations, the most advanced weapons ever created. Your point, my point, sir, is that every single one of them failed. Not most of them, not almost all of them, every single one. The young officer's voice was barely steady. What could possibly do that? What kind of power are we facing? Murkoth looked at the young officer. He saw his own doubts reflected there, his own fears, his own growing certainty that they were approaching something far beyond their understanding. I don't know, he admitted, but we're about to find out. Ahead, growing larger with every passing hour, the blue marble of Earth waited, and deep below its surface, in places no scanner could reach, ancient minds stirred. They had felt the fleet's approach from the moment it entered the dead zone. They had observed. They had warned. Now they prepared. Not for battle. The Guardians had evolved beyond violence millions of years ago. They prepared for something far more difficult. They prepared to offer a choice, because that was what the Guardians did. They didn't destroy their enemies. They didn't fight wars. They simply showed the truth and let others decide. Most chose poorly, but hope, the Guardians had learned, was eternal. Maybe this time would be different. The fleet reached Earth's outer system on the 25th day. Jupiter loomed before them, a massive ball of swirling gases with storms larger than most planets. Saturn's rings caught the distant sunlight like a crown of ice. Mars hung red and cold in the darkness. And there, third from the sun, Earth waited. Fleet Admiral Murkoff stood at the viewport, watching the blue planet grow larger. From this distance, it looked peaceful, beautiful even. White clouds swirled over blue oceans. Green and brown continents spread across its surface. It seemed impossible that this small world could be the source of so much fear. But Murkoff knew better now. He had seen the graveyard. He had heard the voice. "All ships report ready, Admiral," Severa announced. "We are in firing position. Planet Cracker missiles are locked on target. On your command, we can turn that world to rubble." Murkoff didn't respond immediately. He was watching the planet, thinking about the millions of years of ships floating behind them, thinking about the calm voice that had offered them a final warning. "We recommend you do not a threat, not a challenge, just advice, Admiral," Severa prompted. "Order all ships to advance to engagement range. Keep weapons powered, but do not fire until I give the command." The fleet moved closer. They crossed the orbit of Mars, then the asteroid belt. They were now closer to Earth than any hegemony force had ever been. Sensors swept the planet, searching for defenses, for weapons, for any sign of the power that had captured so many ships. They found nothing. Earth appeared completely undefended. No orbital platforms, no weapons satellites, no shield generators. Just a primitive planet with primitive inhabitants going about their primitive lives, completely unaware that 3,000 warships hung in their sky. "Admiral," the science officer reported, "I'm detecting life forms on the surface. Billions of them. They appear to be basic, pre-spaceflight technology. They haven't even developed nuclear power yet in most regions." Murkoff frowned. "That makes no sense. The transmissions, the preserved ships, the technology required for all that. It can't come from primitives. Perhaps there's something hidden. Underground facilities, cloak stations, scan deeper." The science officer worked furiously. Minutes passed. The results were the same. "Nothing, Admiral. If there's advanced technology on or around that planet, it's hidden by methods we cannot detect." Supreme Arbiter Kethra's voice cut through the bridge. She had been monitoring everything through quantum link. "Enough delays, Admiral. Fire the planet crackers. Whatever game these creatures are playing, it ends now." Murkoff hesitated. "Supreme Arbiter, perhaps we should." That was not a suggestion. That was an order. "Fire now, Admiral, or I will find someone who will." Murkoff closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, his face was hard. "All ships, target Earth with planet cracker missiles. Fire on my mark." Across the fleet, thousands of weapons systems came online. The most destructive weapons in the hegemony arsenal locked onto the small blue world. A single missile could crack a planet's crust. They were preparing to fire hundreds. 3, 2, 1, fire. 10,000 fingers pressed firing controls. 10,000 weapons systems executed their commands. Nothing happened. "Admiral," Severa said, confusion in his voice, "the weapons aren't responding. I can see that." "What's wrong?" Officers scrambled across the bridge, checking systems, running diagnostics. The reports came back identical from every ship. "Sir, the weapons are fine. Power is flowing. Targeting is locked. Every system reports ready. But when we execute the fire command, nothing happens. It's like the weapons simply refuse to fire. That's impossible. Weapons don't refuse. They're machines. I know, Admiral. I can't explain it." Murkoff turned to the communications officer. "Get me the Supreme Arbiter." Before the officer could respond, something changed. The stars outside the viewport seemed to shift. The darkness of space became somehow thicker. And then, all at once, every being on every ship felt it. A presence. It was like standing before something vast and ancient, like being an insect watching a mountain move. Every crew member, from the lowest technician to the highest admiral, felt suddenly and completely small. Light began to gather outside the ships, not the light of stars or suns, but something else. It moved with purpose. It had intention. It took shape slowly, becoming something that the mortal minds watching could almost understand. They appeared humanoid but made of pure energy. Their forms shifted and flowed like living fire. They were neither solid nor gas, neither matter nor energy, but something beyond both. Eyes that held the wisdom of ages looked upon the fleet with something that might have been pity. "We are the Guardians," said a voice that was all their voices combined. "We were once as you are, flesh and fear, ambition and ignorance. We have evolved beyond those limitations." Murkoff found his voice somehow. "What are you?" "We are what humanity became, what humanity will become again. We are the protectors of our birth world and our younger selves. We are those who chose to remain when we could have expanded across the universe." The Guardian that spoke moved closer to the absolute truth. Through the viewport, Murkoff saw a face of shifting light, ancient beyond measurement, but somehow kind. "You came with violence in your hearts. Your weapons would have killed billions of innocents. Creatures who have done you no harm. Children who don't even know you exist. We were following orders," Murkoff said. The words sounded hollow even to him. "Orders." The Guardian seemed almost sad. "Yes, we remember orders. We remember when such things mattered to us. Before we understood that every being has a choice. That orders cannot erase responsibility." Supreme Arbiter Kethra's voice cut through the link. "These are tricks, holograms, psychological warfare. Admiral, find their projectors and destroy them." The Guardian turned toward the quantum link device as if it could see Kethra herself. "Your leader speaks from safety, ordering others to die. This do we remember. The powerful hiding behind the sacrifice of the weak. The ambitious spending lives like currency. You will not address the Supreme Arbiter in such," Sevra began. "Peace," the Guardian said, and Sevra fell silent. Not forced silence, not compelled, simply unable to find more words. "Your weapons cannot harm us," the Guardian continued. "Your threats mean nothing. Your fleets, no matter how large, cannot touch what we are. But we do not wish to add your ships to our collection. We have enough monuments to violence." The Guardian's form shifted, becoming something more welcoming, less terrifying, still ancient and powerful, but somehow warmer. "Let us show you instead what we protect. Let us show you why. Perhaps then you will understand. Perhaps then you will choose differently than all those who came before." Murkoff looked at the being of light. Behind it, the blue planet turned slowly, peaceful and unaware. Around him, his crew waited for orders. In the quantum link, Kethra was screaming for action, for weapons, for defiance. But the Admiral had spent his life studying enemies. He knew strength when he saw it, and he knew that what floated before him wasn't just powerful. It was power itself, refined over millions of years into something beyond comprehension. Against that, 3,000 ships were nothing. "Show us," he said quietly. "Admiral, I forbid." Kethra's voice cut off as the quantum link went dark. The Guardian smiled. At least, its light shifted in a way that felt like a smile. "Thank you. It takes courage to choose understanding over conflict. Your leader will continue to scream orders into the void. Let her. She cannot reach you here." Light wrapped around the absolute truth. When it faded, the bridge was different. The same crew stood at the same stations, but they were no longer in orbit around Earth. They were standing in a vast chamber made of light and memory, and around them, stretching to infinity, were the records of countless civilizations. The history of the Guardians was about to be revealed, and everything Fleet Admiral Murkoff believed was about to change forever. The chamber of light and memory stretched beyond sight. It was larger than any structure Murkoff had ever seen, larger than the greatest space stations of the hegemony, larger than some planets, and it was filled with history. Floating displays showed images, sounds, and sensations from millions of years past. Civilizations rose and fell in moments. Species were born, evolved, and vanished in the blink of an eye. The entire history of the galaxy played out around them like a living museum. "Come," the Guardian said. "Let us show you what we were, what we became, what we protect." The small group followed. Murkoth had chosen to bring only his most trusted officers. Sevra walked beside him, her earlier hostility replaced by quiet wonder. Behind them came the science officer, the chief strategist, and representatives from several allied species in the fleet. The Guardian led them to a section of the chamber that showed a primitive world. Blue oceans, green continents, a young yellow sun. Earth, Murkoth recognized. But this looks different. This was Earth 100 million years ago. The Guardian explained. Long before the creatures you call humans existed. Long before any intelligence walked upon its surface. But we were there, hidden, waiting. The display shifted, showing time passing at impossible speeds. Continents drifted. Species evolved and went extinct. Ice ages came and went. And then, finally, small ape-like creatures began walking upright. Humanity began here, weak, fragile, prey to almost everything. Their only advantages were their minds and their ability to work together. The display showed early humans struggling to survive, building tools, making fire, forming communities. We watched them grow, century by century, millennium by millennium. We never interfered. We simply observed and protected. Protected from what? Sevra asked. The Guardian's light flickered in a way that seemed sad. From others like you. The display changed. A massive fleet appeared in Earth's ancient sky. Ships of designs that predated the hegemony by eons. The Vexcari came 30,000 years ago. They wanted Earth's resources. They didn't care about the primitive beings living on its surface. They planned to mine the planet until nothing remained. What happened to them? We stopped them. As we stopped the Crintal 10,000 years after that, and the machine consciousness after them, and the stellar devourers, and countless others. The display showed fleet after fleet approaching Earth each time. The ships simply stopped. No battles, no explosions, just silence, and then the ships drifting away to join the graveyard. Every aggressive species that approached Earth was stopped and collected. Their crews were brought to the surface, their memories of violence gently removed. They lived out their lives in peace, never knowing what they had come to do. You altered their minds, Murkoth said. It wasn't quite an accusation, but it was close. We gave them peace, the Guardian replied. Most beings who choose violence do so because they know nothing else. We showed them another way. Some eventually remembered what they were. Some chose to remain in their new lives. All were treated with kindness. The group continued walking through the chamber. They came to a section showing more recent history. Ships they recognized from the graveyard. Crews being gently transported to Earth's surface. We have a settlement, the Guardian said. Would you like to see it? Before anyone could respond, the light around them shifted. When it cleared, they were standing on solid ground beneath a blue sky. It was Earth. They stood on a hillside overlooking a valley. In the valley below, a city sparkled in the afternoon sun. But it was unlike any city Murkoth had ever seen. It wasn't built from metal or stone or any material he recognized. It seemed to grow from the earth itself, living structures that breathed and changed. This is Haven, the Guardian explained. The home of all who came to conquer and stayed to learn. People walked the streets below. Murkoth's translator implant worked overtime as he recognized species after species. There were Crethians, their fearsome appearance softened by simple clothing and peaceful expressions. Merchant guild traders bartered with beings from species that had been extinct for centuries. Even a few void walkers drifted through the crowds, their energy forms dimmed to comfortable levels. They lived together, Sevra breathed. Species that were enemies for thousands of years. Species that don't even exist anymore in the outside galaxy. Violence is a choice, the Guardian said. Most beings, given time and safety, choose differently. These are the descendants of conquerors. Now they are farmers, artists, philosophers, friends. Murkoth watched a group of children playing in a courtyard below. They were of different species, shapes, and sizes. They laughed together without fear or hatred. How long have some of them been here? He asked. The oldest families arrived 300,000 years ago. They no longer remember their ancestors came as invaders. To them, this has always been home. And the primitive humans, the ones on the rest of the planet? The Guardian gestured, and the view expanded. Beyond the valley, the planet stretched in all directions, forests and mountains and oceans. And there, in the distance, small villages where humans live their simple lives. They are protected. They develop at their own pace, without interference. Someday, perhaps millions of years from now, they will achieve what we achieved. They will evolve. They will grow. They will become like us, or they won't, Murkoth said. They might destroy themselves first. Most species do. Perhaps, the Guardian's voice held infinite patience. But that is their choice to make. Not ours, not yours. We protect their right to fail or succeed on their own terms. The group stood in silence, watching the peaceful valley below, watching beings who had come to destroy living lives of meaning and joy. Why, Murkoth finally asked. Why do you care? You've evolved beyond physical form. You could expand across the universe. You could rule over everything. Why stay here, protecting one small planet? The Guardian turned to face him. Its light seemed somehow warmer. Because this is where we began. Because every journey starts with a single step. And this is where our species took its first step. We protect Earth not because it is strategically important, but because it is home. Because the children playing in that valley might one day evolve into beings like us. Because every primitive human dreaming by their fire might be the ancestor of a guardian. The Guardian moved closer. Its voice softened. And because we remember what it was like to be small and afraid. We remember when we thought power meant domination. When we believed strength was measured in destruction. We stayed to remember. And to help others learn what we learned. What did you learn? That true power is not in what you can destroy. It is in what you can protect, what you can nurture, what you can help to grow. Murkoth looked at the valley one more time. At the peaceful city. At the children playing. At the former conquerors living lives of simple joy. He thought about his fleet. About the planet cracker missiles. About Supreme Arbiter Kethra screaming for destruction. What happens now? He asked. To my fleet? To my crew? That depends on you. The Guardian replied. You have seen what we protect. You understand why. Now you must choose. Return to your people and continue as you were. Or stay and learn. The path to what we are is long. Millions of years long. But it begins with a single choice. The Guardian's light brightened. Put down your weapons. Not because you must. Not because we force you. But because you understand. Murkoth closed his eyes. When he opened them, he knew what he had to do. Take me back to my ship, he said. I have a message to send. Fleet Admiral Murkoth stood on the bridge of the absolute truth, looking at the same displays he had watched for 30 years. The same controls, the same crew stations. Everything was familiar. Everything had changed. The quantum link to Hegemony Central flickered back to life. Supreme Arbiter Kethra's face appeared, twisted with fury. Admiral, you have been out of contact for 6 hours. Report immediately. What happened? Why haven't you destroyed that planet? Murkoth took a slow breath. Behind him, his officers watched in silence. They had all seen what he had seen. They all understood what he now understood. Supreme Arbiter, he said, his voice calm and steady. I am transmitting a full report, but I must advise immediate cessation of all hostile operations against Earth. What? Kethra's silver eyes widened. Have you lost your mind? No, Supreme Arbiter. I believe I have finally found it. He touched a control, sending his message to every ship in the fleet, to Hegemony Central, and to every relay station in the network. Earth is not a threat to be eliminated. It is a mirror. I have seen what we could become, and what we are. What protects that planet is not an enemy. It is humanity itself, evolved over millions of years into beings of pure thought and energy. They could destroy us without effort. Instead, they offer us a chance to learn, to grow, to become something better than we are. He paused, looking directly at Kethra's hologram. I recommend immediate diplomatic contact. I recommend we approach not as conquerors, but as students. The Guardians have much to teach, and we have much to learn. Kethra's face went through several emotions: shock, fury, contempt. You have been compromised. Admiral, your mind has been altered. You are no longer fit for command. My mind has not been altered. My eyes have been opened. There is a difference. I am relieving you of duty. Kethra turned to someone off-screen. Send the order to the reserve fleet. 5,000 ships at the system's edge. They will complete the mission. Murkoth felt his heart sink. He had suspected Kethra would have a backup plan. 5,000 more ships, hidden and waiting. Enough firepower to burn a dozen worlds. Supreme Arbiter, please. You don't understand what you're facing. Those ships will be captured just like all the others. You will gain nothing except the loss of more lives. Then they will die for the hegemony. Kethra's voice was cold as space. As will you, Admiral. You are hereby charged with treason. When this is over, you will face the transmission cut off. Through the viewport, Murkoth saw new lights appearing. The reserve fleet, dropping out of faster-than-light travel. 5,000 warships, spreading across the darkness like an angry swarm. They had no patience for scanning or investigation. They had their orders. Every ship fired at once. 10,000 planet cracker missiles launched toward Earth. Enough firepower to shatter 100 worlds. Enough destruction to end all life on that peaceful blue planet. The missiles streaked through space, crossing millions of kilometers in seconds. On the bridge of the absolute truth, Murkoth watched in horror. The children in the valley. The peaceful city. The primitive humans who didn't even know they were in danger. All of it about to be erased. The missiles reached Earth, and then they weren't there anymore. Neither was the reserve fleet. It happened in an instant. No flash of light. No explosion. One moment, 5,000 ships filled the space around Earth. The next moment, that space was empty. Admiral, several whispered. Where did they go? A guardian appeared on the bridge, its form of light gentle but somehow sad. They fired, it said simply. They demonstrated their intentions beyond doubt. They have been moved to the far side of the galaxy. Their weapons discharged harmlessly into empty space. They're alive? Yes, their lives will be comfortable. Their descendants will live in peace. But they will not return. Perhaps their grandchildren will understand what they could not. The Guardian turned to look at Murkoth. You chose differently. You saw, and you understood, and you chose to seek peace rather than destruction. This is rare. In millions of years, few have made that choice. What happens now? Murkoth asked. To my fleet? To the hegemony? Your fleet is free to leave. You have done no harm. You fired no weapons. You came with violence in your hearts, but you let understanding change you. That is all we ever ask. The Guardian moved toward the viewport, looking out at the stars. The hegemony will send more fleets. They always do. Pride drives species to repeat their mistakes. But your message has already spread. Others have heard. Others are asking questions. Questions? What if conquest isn't strength? What if domination isn't the peak of civilization? What if there is another way? The Guardian turned back to Murkoth. You planted a seed today, Admiral. It will take time to grow. Perhaps generations. Perhaps centuries. But some among your people will hear your words and wonder. Some will choose to learn instead of conquer. Some will take the first step on the long path. A path that leads where? To us, to transcendence. To becoming what humanity became. It is not an easy path. It takes patience and humility and the willingness to accept that you are not the pinnacle of existence. But it is a path worth walking. Back at Hegemony Central, Kethra raged. She ordered another fleet prepared. She denounced Murkoth as a traitor and ordered his arrest. She demanded that Earth be destroyed at any cost. But something strange was happening. The recording of Murkoth's message was spreading. Officers watched it in secret. Politicians discussed it in whispers. Scientists analyzed the data from the failed attack, showing how an entire fleet had simply vanished without a trace. Questions spread like fire. What could do that? What kind of power were they facing? And if that power chose mercy over destruction, what did that mean? A young diplomat named Velari watched Murkoth's message for the 10th time. She saw the sincerity in his face. She heard the wonder in his voice. She thought about everything she had been taught about strength and power and supremacy. Then she drafted a message of her own. She sent it on a narrow beam, aimed at the blue planet called Earth. We wish to learn. We do not come with weapons. We come with questions. Will you teach us? The response was immediate. A warm voice in her mind, welcoming and kind. We have waited a very long time for someone to ask. Come, the path is long, but you have taken the first step. Welcome to the beginning of your true journey." Valari smiled. She didn't know what awaited her at Earth. She didn't know how the hegemony would react to her message. She didn't know if she was throwing away her career, her life, everything she had worked for. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She was ready to learn. On Earth's surface, in a village untouched by the conflict above, a young human child sat beside a fire. She watched the stars wheel overhead, countless points of light in the darkness. She didn't know that ships from a dozen civilizations floated in the space above her. She didn't know that beings of pure energy watched over her world. She didn't know that her distant descendants would one day join those watchers among the stars. She knew only that the stars were beautiful, and that somehow, impossibly, she felt safe beneath them. A shooting star crossed the sky. The girl pointed and laughed with delight. Her mother smiled and held her close. Neither of them knew that the light was a guardian, ascending to welcome the first true student the hegemony had ever sent. Neither of them knew that change was coming, slow but inevitable, to a galaxy that had known only conquest. But the guardians knew. They had always known, and they had all the time in the universe to wait. In the end, that was the answer to the great mystery. That was why no one returned from attacked Earth, not because they were destroyed, not because they were imprisoned, but because they were shown something that made return impossible. They were shown what they could become. Some couldn't accept it. Those joined the collection, living peaceful lives while the universe moved on without them. Some accepted but weren't ready. Those returned to their people, carrying seeds of change that would take generations to bloom. And some, the rarest and most precious, embraced it completely. They stayed. They learned. They grew. Eventually, given enough time, they became guardians themselves. The cycle continued, would always continue, until one day, perhaps millions of years from now, the galaxy itself would transform. Species after species choosing growth over conquest. Civilization after civilization reaching for transcendence. All of it starting from one small blue planet. All of it protected by those who remembered what it meant to take the first step. The guardians watched the stars, patient and eternal, and they smiled.